welcome everyone on the second episode of Zero Hallucination. Today we have a guest, a founder. This week we want to do a small segment on what we call as getting spotted in cyber. So we'll be inviting founders, CEOs who recently raised money, and we'll ask them questions about what it takes to raise in this environment. So welcome Sanjay Nagraj, co-founder and CTO of Traceable. Very exciting AP security company. Yes, Sanjay, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, no, thanks for having me, Pramod and Shashank. A wonderful podcast. Obviously, I've followed you guys for a long time now and doing some amazing this as part of the cybersecurity industry, but broadly for founders and startups and everything else. So thank you for having me as part of this. In the form of introduction that way on my end, co-founder, CTO, Traceable. I've been in the DevSecOps space before the term even existed for a long, long time, right? I had the opportunity to have built many products and companies and everything else that way, but not all of them were big. A little bit of the last one, which was AppDynamics as a company with the founder of AppDynamics, a lot more famous than me. That was also my partner in crime here at Traceable. Jyoti Bansal had the opportunity to go build App Dynamics, and was talking to someone the other day, and almost close to $1 billion of revenue flowed through some of the products that I was part of. So something to be happy about, because you get a front row seat in terms of building something that serves customers. Now at Traceable, of course, API security. A lot more to talk about that today, as to why we believe that API security, we're just getting started with this. There's a much, much bigger market ahead of us, and we'll talk about all of those things.
Yeah, congratulations again. So the PR mentioned like a $30 million strategic round led by IDP and also City Ventures. So can you talk a bit about how the round came about? Like, were you actively reading? I know there's been like a lot of buzz in the market about you guys and how well you're scaling. So probably that's one of the reason why this one is what. But I think we just like the health founders as plan as well. The questions is about the timing of the raise, right? Like where is a good time to raise?
Yeah. So I think so. First of all, yes, Traceable, we raised $30 million in equity in what we called as a strategic round. So that brings our total to about $100 million, which is still about a third of what everybody else, as in API security players, have raised in the market. One of them obviously got sold, the other one still exists, as in sort of security. The whole thing, why first of all, why are we considering it as a strategic raid round that way, is because of participation, as you said, by some of like City Ventures and everything else, because that aligns with some of our core ICP as a platform as well. And I think honestly, we can talk at length about how we went through this, but first let me just talk about a little bit around City Ventures itself and why we were impressed with the way they approached it. If you look at Matt Cavanella, a lot of people know him, and the broader City Ventures, Nick and Blaze and Arvind and everybody else, the way they actually approach this entire process and the way they work with you is super amazing. If people don't know about it, they should definitely check it out. They're one of the premier ventures that way in terms of corporate ventures that way, if you look at it. The reason is that when you're going out for an ICP, you really need to understand all of the nuances around how these large organizations work. Not just Citi, but every other financial, fintech, healthcare, retail. We are in every single vertical that way. Every organization has its own nuances. It means that in order to work with some of these guys who've seen how that movie is played. Yes, coming from AppDynamics or the sister company Harness and everything else, we have a fairly decent idea, but a lot changes every 5 years, every 3 years in terms of how you work through this, right? And everybody, for anybody who's done this, can understand that you need to not just understand, okay, I have a great product. It's about how do you go and actually make sure that you're being successful in these large organizations. starting all the way from your stage zero of the sales cycle into a close, and then post sales into deployment and making the customer successful. A lot of things that you need to understand, right? So that's why strategically we were very interested in partnering with Citi as they approach. Now, in terms of why did we even go through this? And the point that you're making is timing some of these things is always hard. And honestly, anybody who tells you, like, I'll give you an example. Somebody said when we did our Series B round, this is now feels like years ago, which is 2 years ago, in May 22. Everybody was like, "Wow, you guys timed it perfectly well. It was right at the peak of the market when everything started to fall." As much as we would love to take credit for timing it, it so happens that it was part of the thought process. It was not exactly like, okay, this is the peak, we're gonna do it, right? It was like you have to raise, in my opinion at least, you have to be looking to raise the money always, which is, it means that it's a continuous process. It's not like you're looking for money, you're looking for partners. I think that is the best way that I can describe our approach as a company, is looking for partners. I mean, talking to Pramod before as an example earlier, it's all about getting to know the people. And that's what we did at that time. Like, for example, IVP was there in that, Tiger Global was there. It's about having all of these conversations much earlier on so that they are part of the journey is one thing that we did. Even here as well. I mean, we've been talking to some of these guys for almost 6 to 8 months about where do they see the market? Who are they actually looking at in the market? Why do they think Traceable is the right partner? So it's about the right partnership. So it was not like we were looking to raise or we needed to raise. Because especially that's going back to the statement about we have raised only one third of the money the market has raised, is the lessening out people are a little bit learning on from Roller Shashank. You guys recognize this, is that don't go and raise money if you don't need it, right? And scale responsibly, all the things that probably we're going to talk about, right? All applies here. So it's not like we were looking to raise. We had a lot of inbound interest because of Pramod, as you said, that customers started to talk about us, other venture partners started to talk about us to say, hey, these guys are building the company for the long run. They have a much bigger vision as a company, where they want to go. And that's where some of these inbound conversations started to come in. And we decided to kind of say, okay, let us obviously get a bit more cushion, but also bring in strategics who can actually help us a lot more.
I want to ask a tiny bit because it piqued my interest as you were speaking about this raise. You sort of highlighted 2 points, Sanjay, which kind of stuck with me. One was partnership, and one was the fact that, you are sort of continuously raising, if you may, right? Like, and in other words, continuously looking for partners. And then, of course, you've gone with a corporate VC, a CVC, as opposed to a fund in this strategic round. Uh, talk to us a little bit, like just tell us about what that nuance or the difference may be. A pure fund, just in the business of investing, a VC fund versus, a corporate VC, a CVC like your City Ventures, your current partner, who's of course has got a large business behind them, and they might even be users simultaneously as much as investors. So anything there that the listeners could take away, CVC versus pure funds?
Sure. So, first of all, there are a couple of things that we need to recognize here. One is, remember, City Ventures was one of the investors as part of the round. We have Sorensen, we have Jared Isaac as part of this, but also the round was led by IVP and Unusual Ventures as part of the existing listing as well. So that means that the lead was still IVP, because IVP saw all the progress and they said, hey, yes, we want to obviously come in and lead the round as well, right? So just want to make sure there's clarity on that. It's not like it was a pure City Ventures fund. But now back to the conversation about why someone like a City, right? If you're considering some form of a CVC, as I said, it's about the right partner in the enterprise world itself. So you kind of understand. It is like anything else. When I talk about partnership, when I say it's a continuous thing, whether it is VCs, whether it is CVCs, or whether it is customers, whether it is employees that you want to hire, it's always a continuous journey. I'll just give you two examples. When I talk about customers, when you talk about employees, there's an employee that I had talked to who was supposed to be employee number three, engineer number three coming into the company. I'm going back now almost 5 years ago, right? He is joining us now next week. And why? Very, very well known guy, XRP and everything else. But the reason why I say that is that means that there's always this continuous motion that you're going through. It's not like you want to hire them, but it's about the time has to be right for them. It is maintaining those partnerships and relationships is very, very key. Similarly, a customer that we talked to 3 years ago, and the conversation about what are they going to do for API security, they decided not to pursue in one case. In other cases, they decided to go with another competition, which was all okay. Over the last 3 years, I've had, I don't even know, 5 or 6 conversations with them about where do they see the API security market go. Not because I was hoping that, oh, somehow silently hoping that they become a customer. It's more about making sure that thought leadership continuously is exchanged, and that means that it is framing not just my thoughts, but the company's thoughts in terms of where the future should be, right? So that's the same thing that I look at from a partnership, whether it is a CVC or a VC, is at the end of the day, Shashank and Pramod, right? It's all a human connection. We all thrive on that, right? And that's what the thought process here as well been.
Great.
Right here.
So you raised Series B plus one, right? So one of the
Yeah.
things that's going around in cyber is like how hard it is to raise the round up to sales in Series B. Like that means everyone thinks that a lot
Yeah.
of the cyber exits happen within, let's say, $200 to $500 million. So there is, I mean, there's less excitement about like Series B plus rounds in cyber.
Yeah.
So we'd just like to get your opinions on like, you're venturing beyond like the Series B, like sort of you're going into this escape, like a
Yes.
verified air right now. So just wanted to understand like your thinking about like leading this next round and sort of going all the way.
Yeah, so I think what I can tell you from our perspective, based on how we were performing and based on, as I said, the continuous partnership that we were looking at, for us this was a relatively and quick and easy process because yes, IVP was still leading this extension as well, right? But I think one thing that it highlighted, which everybody is seeing, which is what you're referring to, Pramod, is the fundraising environment that way has changed significantly, right? Since the heights of the pandemic and the zero interest rate period that existed, it's significantly changed, right? We all should recognize that. That means that the days of grow at any cost and the minimal due diligence are behind us. I still remember back in 22, I'm sure, Pramod, you have tons of these, where I used to get a call from a few VCs to say, can I have you please talk to these guys to understand what they do, but also tell them why we are the best VCs in town. And I used to say, yeah, tonight I'm a little busy. Can I do this in a few days? And they used to say, nope. They already have 3 term sheets, and we're trying to see if they can actually get in as well, right? So that was the frenzy that used to exist at that time. That's all you guys tell me, but it's a little bit gone right now. Yes, maybe if somebody says Gen AI, it still a little bit happens to an extent, but it is gone. Right? Why I'm making that point is that means that the grow at all costs, yeah, and no diligence in some cases is not there, right? So the market is actually looking, in my opinion, at least, a more healthier and a long-term sustainable, in terms of where we are. That means that the fundamentals are back in focus right now, right? That doesn't mean like even today you have to be completely profitable or near profitable. That's never the case when you look at a B plus round, right? But the core belief that everybody is kind of having a conversation about and making an assumption is that are these guys building the best product? Are these guys serving the customers in terms of the value? Are these guys fiscally responsible in terms of where the dollars are going? And that means that the fiscal growth is there. And the team that is behind it, not just from a go-to-market perspective, but the overall team, right? Is that healthy? One of the things that we can extend a little bit earlier compared to everybody else is we brought in a CFO right after RB. An amazing guy, Steve John, brought in, right? He keeps everybody, me, everybody, tight in terms of where do we spend, what do we spend. So if you look at it, everybody flies economy. Yeah, I mean, I was on a trip to East Coast, everywhere zigzagging a few different cities and everything else. Everything is economy flights is what everybody takes. The reason is that not because it's a big deal. But why I'm saying is that means that the waves of fiscal responsibility has come back to the market. Everybody is thinking about this. How do we best conserve the money for the long run as we build a company, right? So that's the kind of the change and see, right? But what I can tell you is from all of my recent experiences now, right? When you look at anybody as an investor, right? At the end of the day, they're looking at the ROI for that fund and LPs and everything else. That means that they know that most of the investments that they do will fail, but there will be one or two which is what is going to give them the great outcome that way, right?
I think I think just the question I wanted to ask anyway, I think you answered it is like, say someone raised a Series B or Series B in cyber and they want to raise the next round. I think
Yes.
what advice do you give them? Would you give them advice like growth at all costs or try to get like that's what I in that experience like try to get profitable and somewhere in between it's like trying to get an ROI for every dollar you spend. So if you can structure it that way.
Sure. Let me specifically talk about that, right? I don't think growth at all costs is going to work. No, it's just not possible unless, as I said, somebody has some magical story about Gen AI and they've actually proven it out, right? That actually this is making somebody like Perplexity or any of these guys who are like proving it out or leaning to an extent, not leaning as much ahead, but someone like that who's actually proven it out, right? In Gen AI or anything else for that matter, right? Grow is okay, but most of the cases, especially in cybersecurity today, in my opinion, is that the ROI for every dollar that they're spending is what is being expected. You were at RSA, right? RSA, if you look at some of the guys who used to have the largest booths last year, they're not there this time at RSA, right? The $1 million booths that used to be more than Shashank US would have seen it, amazing ones, right? It's all gone. Everybody is in smaller booths because it means that everybody is looking at what's the ROI from the entire RSA. So that extends to everything, in my opinion, Pramod. But the point I was trying to make was that today, most of the people in cybersecurity, at least, in my opinion, right, as they're looking to invest, as I said, they're looking for a liver of that home run beyond the stage B, right, as a company, right. That means that, in my opinion, there are four things that they're kind of looking at. One is they're thinking about, is this a platform? I don't want to bring up the whole conversation about platform and platformization and everything else, right? But they're looking for platforms over point solutions. Is somebody just going, in our case, for example, is somebody going and solving just a discovery problem or they're solving a testing problem? They're not interested in point solutions beyond B, right? Pre-B, sure, there's a conversation to be had about that, right? That's one, as in platform versus a point solution. The second thing is that there is a lot of scrutiny and diligence on our sales efficiency. So if you are in that phase, you really need to understand very, very strongly how you inspect the pipeline, what is the conversion rates, you have a full on understanding, what is your competitive win rates, all of those things, which is part of your sales efficiency, sales 101 to an extent, right, has become very, very important because otherwise they are looking at this as still they don't know where this is going to go. Am I telling you that everything is perfect on our end to say every single thing we know exactly and how to forecast? No. But the efficiency aspects of it exist where we know exactly what is going on. We know exactly what the win rates are. We know exactly what the conversions are from stage to stage. So it means that we are now in a stage where we can say, how do we improve all of those things, right? That's what they're looking for. The third thing, in my opinion, they're looking for is, of course, customer retention and value delivery, right? I mean, it goes through all of the NRRs that way and overall retention that way, if you look at it, right? How are we retaining? How are we expanding? That's the third thing in my opinion they're looking at. The fourth one is what you're a little bit talking about, which is the stage appropriateness in terms of the financial profile, right? Which is, are we using the cash responsibly that way? Are we is the ARR growth that way? Is obviously something that everybody's looking at, but in terms of the fiscal responsibility, they're looking at gross margins, they are looking at net cash burn, and they are looking for a path to profitability. Doesn't mean that it needs to exist today, right? But they're definitely looking at a path to profitability in terms of where we are based on the market overall itself. And of course, ARR is always going to be king. That's never going to go away. But they're willing to accept I would profitability metric itself, lower ones, but definitely not to the degree that we saw until up till 22.
Yeah, makes sense.
I've been very curious as I'm listening to Sanjay, and you promote sort of taking him in the direction of fundraising primarily, but it's all obviously leading back to what's the opportunity, what's the market, right? And so I'm very keen to kind of double click on that a little bit. And maybe I'll lead with something that we've all seen recently in the segment that you guys are one of the leaders there, which is we saw an acquisition, right? We saw No Name now become part of Akamai. And I think the numbers that are out there in the public for that transaction is somewhere in like, $500 million range, 550 million or so. And I think the revenue numbers for them were closer to about 20 million, right? So I'm kind of doing my rough math in my head saying, well, you've got your, 550 million or so revenue and, whatever, 20 odd million, about 25, 30x type multiple that they got. And it may be an indication of the market, right? Why they sold themselves out. With just that as a leading premise, what do you take away from that transaction in terms of the market opportunity? And is it even representative, right? Like, should we even be looking at that as a representative option? Is there a much larger TAM that somehow the market isn't understanding? Or, is that something that's sort of a leading indicator? I'd love to get your 2 cents there, what you think about it.
100%. Obviously, this is a conversation that has happened multiple times in many, many cases. Right? And in fact, this was a conversation that Jyoti and I were having as well. Where we're like, hey, what is the take? How are we think? How should we be thinking about it? Thinking as a job. The first thing that we did was we went back to 2009. I'm sure you guys have followed it at that time, right? There was this company called as Wiley and acquired by CA from an API perspective for 375 million at that time. And then IBM did a few more smaller acquisitions that way, whatnot, right? So everybody started to talk about, oh my God, that is it. This is the APM market. It's whatever they were doing as in revenue. That is it, 375. That's the market. AppDynamics, New Relic, and everybody else came out of that. I really don't know. They're just going to be tucked into something else smaller. What people did not predict at that time was that microservices and application infrastructures and application architectures are going to go through a significant amount of change compared to where they were back in 2009, 2010, right? And the whole digital transformation that's still happening of course, every degree changes. Nobody had predicted it, right? And we all know how that story evolved, starting from, oh, this is maybe best case scenario, $500 million market to $1 billion to $2 billion to 4 to 8 to 16 to whatever it is today, 20, 30, whatever the market, how you look at it as an expanded market, right? Of course, at the 375 to 3.7 billion, if you look at it, 10x of that was the price. So that means that every market has a way, in my opinion, at least, again, right? You guys have seen a lot of this. Some of these things, predictions, are based on what you know today versus what it's going to take shape tomorrow. I'll tell you why that's important from an API security market perspective, right? So the way I think about this is that every business today is an API-driven business. If it is not already, it is going to be in the next 5 years. That means that the traffic that we used to see, which was mostly web traffic before, is all becoming API traffic down the line. Like prediction, even today, we see almost a lot of the 80% of the traffic, 85% of the traffic that comes in, ignoring the static web pages and whatnot that actually flows. 80% of it is actually API level traffic. Yes, it's being called from the browser, it's being called from the mobile app at the same time. Everything is, whether it's single page apps and everything else, they're all API level traffic, right? If you think about it that way, the market, I cannot predict today where it is going to be 5 years from now, because if each one of these now need to be looked at, like for some of our customers, for example, we are watching and protecting almost 400 to 500 billion calls per month, right? Lots and lots of traffic. I'm talking about some of the very well-known brands out there, right? That means that market is going to expand over a period of time. Now, here's where I want to kind of, again, every company, right, starts with the way that they want to build the product, right? Our direction was build the product from a runtime security perspective. We were not, initially when we started, we were not going and saying, I'm going back now 4 years ago, is we were like, okay, I'm going to go solve discovery and testing only. Our thought was that if we can solve runtime protection with a security data lake as an approach, then you can actually go and shift left at any point of time to go capture the entire aspect of end-to-end API security, right? Everybody approaches it differently. Thought process is that if I were to take a simple analogy there, Shashank, we all probably can relate to this, is it's a little bit of a provocative statement on my end that I'm still thinking through that. It's like a cricket versus baseball. The way I think about it is that you can build a baseball team, right? Which I think about web application protection. It's like you can build nothing to do with against baseball. Or baseball is a great game, cricket is a great game, right? But I'm trying to fit in an analogy in terms of how it works is if you have built a baseball team, which is what your web application firewalls could be. Now you say that somebody says that, hey, no, cricket is an amazing thing. It's coming to the US. I think a lot more teams should be there. I think these players can do that as well. Go and do it, right? It sounds straightforward. So what do? You say, okay, there are 9 players here, there are 11. Okay, let me bring in 2 cricketers so that I can make it 11-player team. Then you add, that's when you go buy a smaller security company and say, yep, let me go and attack this so that now I understand API security. But then you realize, no, shit, no, this is not the way it works. I need to understand the APIs, internal APIs, I need to discover them, I need to test them and everything else. Then you want to say, yeah, I'm going to buy another player, cricket sense, another set of players, maybe make it more like 50-50 of a baseball and a cricket players. Like, okay, now I have a perfect team which can do both baseball and cricket. You all know how that's going to end up over a period of time. Either you become over a period of time a cricket team, or you become nothing because you're trying to straddle in both ways. That's the way I think about API security, or somebody just solving applications, web applications. Nothing wrong with that. It's have a bat and a ball, which is a commonality between the two. Doesn't mean that means that the data in both of these things is the same. But it doesn't mean that the context is the same, or the rules are the same, or the players are the same. That is where I believe I'm a little bit answering this as a bigger question, which is why API security as a market is much, much bigger if you can actually go build a platform for the long run. This is not about us versus a WAF in anywhere. I just want to kind of broaden that statement.
Interesting take, and quite timely with your cricket analogy with all the IPL in full swing, quite literally. Yeah, I think like you make 2 good points there, Sanjay, which I want to kind of highlight and pull out very quickly before we sort of, start converging and wrapping up this session. One is that I think you're saying, well, the skills or the capabilities or the features that are there in the web application world need to get translated into this new world of APIs, and that's where the world is moving, right? It is a lot about API traffic. So what we're seeing today is great, but it's still sort of early signs. There's a lot more to come. I think like that's the sort of picture you're painting.
Exactly.
Which is fantastic. Yeah, it's a very buoyant, good sort of take on the market. So then I just have one follow-up question as a part of it. Like, if you were to just pull that down and say, well, what would it look like in the next foreseeable future? Let's say year, 2 years, and then what should we expect 5 years out? Right. So what would be your take? How would you help people understand this market? The short term and the mid to long.
Yes. My opinion would be going back to the earlier conversation about people are looking for platforms to invest into. The same thing from customers' perspective as well. When you think about API security, is that people are saying that can somebody solve this from end to end, understanding the APIs from the ground up, from a discovery perspective, understanding the APIs, the data that's flowing through it, edge APIs, internal APIs, and third-party APIs, understanding that APIs end to end to solve discovery, testing of those APIs, one-time protection against fraud and abuse, and threat hunting of those APIs. That overall platform is where we are going to converge in the next 18 months. That means that some of the players who are just focusing on discovery and testing today, I think they'll have a hard time, in my opinion at least, getting funded and moving the process. But nothing wrong with that. It just means that probably they'll all get into something else as a company. Right? That's the way at least I see it in 18 months from now. Now, someone like us, or maybe there are others as well who are playing this game, who are focused on this long term from an API security perspective, will be there to solve that as a problem. And if you think about it, 5 years, as in, I do see a significant opportunity of shifting left. That's where I feel that there's a lot of things that will come together from all the way from the code to runtime is what I see across the board. There's a part of it that's been solved now. Significantly on the left side of it will get solved as a company. Doesn't mean it's us. somebody else. It doesn't matter who it is. They can solve it from an API's perspective, look at it from an ASPM as an API SPM that way, that positive side of it on the left, and then runtime bringing more and more context into play. From an API SIM perspective to call it API XDR for the APIs, all of those things is where I see a lot of those things broaden over the next 3 to 5 years. Of course, Gen AI at the top of it is going to have a lot of impact on both sides of it because Gen AI from an API's perspective, we just launched, as you know, some time ago around Gen AI API protection because at the end of the day, it's an API that's happening from a runtime perspective, runtime or in the left side of it in terms of testing those APIs. So that will be there, but the usage of Gen AI is going to increase a lot more as the technology matures a lot more for runtime protection. Right? That's where I see the next 5 years, 3 to 5 years, and say is where my take is that businesses, as they drive more and more towards APIs, API security as a platform will significantly expand to solve all of their needs end to end. Better.
Fantastic. Great vision, short term as well as long term. I also see you've dropped two terms, which I'm sure if Gartner is listening in, they'll start churning out some of those quadrants, API, SPM, and AXDR. So fantastic.
We'll see.
Exactly. But the acronyms are also expanding. Very cool. Okay, back to you, Pramod. Help us wrap this up. I think we have exceeded the time a bit, but hopefully our listeners will enjoy this. Sanjay has shared a lot of good insights here.
Yeah, so Sanjay, thanks a lot for showing up. Like I said, you were the first guest on the show, so you did a fantastic job. So just any parting words, like any customers looking for an API security solution or, employees want to join a company in this space, like what's like one big reason they should consider Traceable?
Absolutely. First, let me talk about the people who may want to join or be part of this journey. We are hiring across the board from sales to engineering to marketing and customer success and everything else that way. It's an engineering product led culture as a company that but led primarily by the customer obsession that we have to make sure the customers are deriving value. So if you're somebody who is smart, but also focused on what is the end goal from a customer, from a value realization perspective, this is the company because the philosophy of the company that we have built is based on it's your company. Yes, we happen to start it, but you're the ones who are building the company overall in the long run. Right? That's one thing from a people perspective. From a customer's perspective, very simply, I would say this, which is if you are looking for a partner for you for the long run who can help you solve the API security needs for you, not just from a compliance perspective, but from a protection perspective and threat hunting perspective, definitely come and talk to us. If you're looking for something which is not just a checkbox because you want to have something as a solution and looking for truly solving the problem. Yes, we're there for the checkbox as well, but if you're looking to truly solve the problem, we would love to partner with you.
Great. Thanks a lot again for coming to the show and best of luck.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Good luck to
Thanks
you,
for having
Sanjay.
me.
Thank you.
Thanks.